When you picture Benjamin Franklin, you probably see a kindly old man with bifocals flying a kite in a thunderstorm. That's a nice story. It's also fantastic marketing. The man who arrived in France in 1776 at the age of 70 was not a folksy inventor. He was one of the most cunning political operators of the 18th century. He landed in a kingdom practically vibrating with Enlightenment ideals and a deep, abiding hatred for Great Britain. France was bored, fashionable, and desperate for a cause. Franklin looked at this situation and understood with crystal clarity that he was about to become the most popular toy they had ever seen. His mission was to get money, guns, and soldiers to save a fledgling revolution, and he was prepared to do it by any means necessary. The French elite expected an American diplomat. What they got was a performance. Franklin ditched the powdered wig, the standard uniform for any gentleman of status, and wore his own thinning hair. He donned simple brown homespun suits. And most famously, he wore a massive fur cap. He looked less like a diplomat and more like someone who had just wrestled a bear. To the hyper-stylized French court, this wasn't sloppy, it was a brilliant costume. He was playing the part of the noble savage, the natural philosopher from the untamed American wilderness. They lapped it up. His face was plastered on medallions, in paintings, and on porcelain chamber pots. People would literally stand for hours just to watch him pass by. All because he understood that in the world of high-stakes diplomacy, the best weapon is a carefully constructed story. Franklin set up his headquarters in a lovely little spot in Passy, just outside Paris. It was also, for all intents and purposes, a British intelligence agency's dream come true. His personal secretary and close confidant, Edward Bancroft, was a British double agent the entire time. The whole time. Bancroft would write secret letters in invisible ink, place them in bottles, and drop them in a hollow tree on the Tuileries garden path for his British handler to pick up. You can't make this stuff up. Franklin, for his part, was shockingly careless. He left sensitive documents out in the open, bragged about his diplomatic progress, and basically assumed everyone was on his side. Historians debate whether he knew about Bancroft and was feeding him misinformation, or if he was just blissfully, dangerously naive. Given his track record, the former is possible, but the latter is so much more humanly ridiculous. Before he became America's man in Paris, Franklin spent years in London as a colonial agent. This wasn't exactly a quiet time for him either. He developed a close friendship with a man named Sir Francis Dashwood, a notorious libertine and founder of the infamous Hellfire Club. Now, the club's activities have been exaggerated into tales of satanic rituals, but at its core, it was a playground for the rich and powerful to engage in behavior that would make a rock star blush. Franklin was a visitor to Dashwood's estate, collaborated with him on a revised Book of Common Prayer, and generally moved in these elite, morally flexible circles. This wasn't the puritanical America of powdered wigs and stern sermons. This was a man comfortable with the messy, hypocritical, and pleasure-seeking side of human nature, a trait that would serve him exceptionally well in Paris. Franklin's job wasn't just to get French support. It was to get it without making America a French puppet. It was a masterclass in leverage. He consistently hinted to the French foreign minister, the Comte de Vergennes, that the Americans might just reconcile with Britain if France didn't hurry up and help. At the same time, he was meeting with British agents, making them think a deal was possible, which in turn terrified the French. He was basically playing the world's two superpowers against each other, while representing a country that barely had an army and no navy to speak of. After the American victory at Saratoga, the French finally committed. Franklin secured the Treaty of Alliance in 1778, a document that guaranteed French military support and, almost certainly, American independence. Beyond the negotiating table, Franklin was a weapon of mass information. He set up his own printing press in his home in Passy and became America's first and possibly greatest propagandist. He didn't just print official documents, he printed fakes. His masterpiece was a fake issue of a real Boston newspaper, which he then circulated around Europe. It included a horrifying, completely fabricated story about American scalps, including those of women and children being sent to the King of England as trophies by his Native American allies. He even included a letter, supposedly from a real American naval hero, describing the brutality. It was grisly, it was utterly false, and it was devastatingly effective at turning European public opinion against the British. Fake news, it turns out, is not a new invention. In Paris, political power flowed through social connections, and social connections flowed through the city's influential women and their salons. Franklin, the septuagenarian widower, became the city's most desirable flirt. His two most famous relationships were with Madame Brillon, a brilliant musician in her 30s, and Madame Helvetius, a wealthy and powerful widow who hosted one of the most important intellectual salons. He wrote them witty, charming, and shockingly forward letters. He proposed marriage to Madame Helvetius, who turned him down. This wasn't just a lonely old man looking for company. This was statecraft. Access to these women and their networks gave him unparalleled insight and influence, allowing him to bypass stuffy official channels and get things done. He was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. In 1780, America decided Franklin needed some help, so they sent over John Adams. This was a terrible idea. Adams was everything Franklin was not: rigid, puritanical, humorless, and deeply suspicious of the French. He was horrified by Franklin's methods. He saw a lazy old man flirting his days away while the revolution was at stake. Adams wrote in his diary that Franklin had a passion for women that would kill a man of 80. The jealousy is practically dripping off the page. While Adams tried to strong-arm the French with blunt demands and lectures on Republican virtue, Franklin was charming his way to another multi-million-livre loan. The French foreign minister eventually got so fed up with Adams that he refused to meet with him, communicating only through Franklin. So much for teamwork. Let's be clear about France's financial situation. It was terrible. The country was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. And yet, Franklin managed to squeeze loan after loan out of them. We're talking about millions of livres, the equivalent of billions today. He didn't do it with complex financial models or economic presentations. He did it by being Benjamin Franklin. He was a cultural phenomenon. The French government wasn't just investing in a war, they were investing in the living embodiment of the Enlightenment ideals they admired. Giving money to Franklin was a way for the French aristocracy to feel revolutionary and forward-thinking without actually having to change anything about their own lives. A terrible long-term strategy, as it turns out. When it came time to negotiate the final peace treaty with Britain, Franklin, along with John Jay and John Adams, was given a clear instruction from the American Congress: do nothing without consulting our French allies. So, naturally, Franklin ignored them completely. He correctly suspected that France and its ally Spain wanted to limit American expansion, keeping the new nation weak and contained east of the Appalachian Mountains. He opened a secret back channel to the British. Playing the British and French against each other one last time, he secured an unbelievably favorable deal for the United States: full independence, vast territory all the way to the Mississippi River, and fishing rights off Canada. He only told the French after the preliminary treaty was already signed. Vergennes was furious, but he couldn't do anything. It was a diplomatic mugging. So, when Franklin finally sailed home in 1785, he left behind a transformed world. He had secured the future of a new nation through methods that were, to put it mildly, unorthodox. He wasn't a soldier or a traditional statesman. He was something new, a master of soft power, using his fame, his wit, and his profound understanding of human nature as weapons. The image of the simple man from the New World was a carefully crafted illusion, behind which operated a mind as sharp and dangerous as any in Europe. He proved that a printing press could be as powerful as a cannon, and a well-timed flirtation could be more effective than a formal demand. He played the game of empires and, against all odds, he won. And what about France, America's greatest ally? Well, the massive, crippling debt they incurred funding the American Revolution pushed their already strained finances over the edge. The revolutionary ideas Franklin had so charmingly embodied came home to roost. In 1789, just as the new American government was getting started, the French Revolution exploded. In a perfect, beautiful twist of historical irony, the French monarchy's decision to bankrupt itself to fight a proxy war for liberty against a rival king ended with their own people demanding liberty and their king's head. It's a wonderful lesson in unintended consequences, one that Franklin, a man who understood cause and effect better than most, would have surely appreciated. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!